Good morning, noon, evening or night, depending when you're watching this video. My name is Legend and welcome back to World of Tanks and the NBTT'ay Replay series, where once again we watch the best replays of the NBTT clan. And today we have a nice replay of the tier 10 Swedish heavy tank, the Kranvagn, played by Toby Thomas. Once again, I think this is the third time in a row he's now been featured in this series, so hopefully there's no recently buffed overpowered tank in which he has racked up even higher experience records. Yeah, just slow a bit down, Toby. I mean, come on. There are other members of the clan that I want to present in this series. Give them a spot as well. Give them some room on this podium. Well, maybe I'm going to ignore his replays from now on. Who knows? Who knows? But let's get back into this replay for now. And he is playing on the map Malinovka, making a very smart decision to go to the hill, because of course the Kranvagn tier 10 Swedish heavy tank with the best gun depression amongst any tier 10, I believe. Yes, that's true. 12 degrees on top of my head. Correct me on the editing right here if I'm wrong. But with that insane amount of gun depression, he can easily encounter some of the enemies that he is facing up here. Well, I say that, but then again, just look a moment before the first enemies will appear, and now next to the T-57 Heavy he has to face the Object 279E, which even held down you might be protected from it, but well, he is also protected from you with his insane armor. Also a very nice detail that he does here, he turns his gun more upwards in order to hide the, well, relatively small weak spots on top of his turret. There are still two very small cupolars, but by elevating the gun he can completely hide those, being almost completely invulnerable to absolute invulnerable. Also, before he got actually on the hill, he checked beforehand on how much support goes along with him towards the hill. That's also a very important thing to look out for, is even though you are very strong and top of the hill with your gun depression, having no support will mean that at one moment the enemies that might be in more numbers will overrun you eventually. So very good that he checked that out. And on this point he doesn't really rush in with his team on that isolated UDES, but supports them from his original invulnerable location, being a very nice support to his advancing teammates. And by doing that, eventually he is able to take again some side shots at the E100, but has some issues with panning him. I believe one of those shells hit the gun of the friendly 60 TP and the other one just bounced off the side of the well-angled turret of the E100, which was angled perfectly, in which case even the heat round, which Toby Thomas is gladly using against these heavy tanks, is even not able to pan. Getting shot on from the back in Malinovka, it's a given, it's Malinovka, Kempinovka, if I should say. It's a more suitable name actually for this map, so of course he is not able to get some blind shots in, because the locations in which you can snipe towards the hill is quite numerous. So in his advance he makes another very smart decision to take the road off the hill as quickly as possible. Also, he reacts extremely fast towards his track and repairs it within half a second. So very nice reactions here, especially on that location where you can get caught once again in a retracking shot or from some shot of another angle by that Jagdpanzer E100, for example, who was luckily not watching, was not looking this way, so even more damage for Toby right here. And slowly advancing further forwards is the best that Toby here can do on this position, he still is able to find locations in which he can utilize his gun depression the most, instead of driving further forwards towards more flatter areas on this position. He specifically seeks out positions with more terrain relief in order to use his turret more efficiently. Quickly fires off his shot without being fully aimed because he got spotted, and he knows what the side of his turret might be facing, and that's the entire camping team left in those notorious forests on Camp Novka. And at this moment, Toby knows actually that he isn't really that useful on this flank anymore, and actually pulls back. It's a very smart decision once again, because while sitting at a location that isn't really that useful anymore, why staying there? And by doing this, he also gets out of harm's way of the 279E before he is able to get into a crossfire, and he is reflanking once again back to the top of the hill in order to counter that 279E from once again his hold down position, but not before he is able to get some sniping shots at the Foch B, although this is also quite maybe shouldn't have done that moment, because the Kranwang, it might be good in a lot of things, although it got nerfed some time ago. It never could snipe, and it still definitely cannot snipe, and he's wasting in the sense some of his precious heat rounds which he might need against the 279E. And he does it once again, shooting away the last remaining heat shells that he got, and now he has to face the 279E with regular APCR. Even with heat, it was a difficult task, but now it's even harder. But when you cannot pan a tank frontally, what do? Of course, the next best thing you can, and that is tracking your opponent. And this way, Toby makes the 279E a easier target for his teammates. Pretty much he is a sitting duck for his last remaining artillery, which makes him a one-shot. Some moments later, Toby decides not to snipe in this case on the Foch B. Maybe he finally learned that it's quite a low chance to actually hit far targets, but he is trying again on the Panzer E100, but there isn't really that much weak spots or easy to pen parts of the tank that he is able to find. But eventually he is able to find the 279E once again, and hopefully the RT of his team is still paying attention, and he is finishing off what might have been the biggest threat towards Toby in this battle, even though the 279E was already a one-shot. But for that small moment it was a 2 versus 6, and Toby quickly gets out of harm's way before the artillery is able to balance him. So he actually makes another very conscious move, very supportive move, and that is trying to protect his artillery piece. Locating more towards the artillery makes the odds of the artillery surviving just a tad bit higher than instead, he could have gone up the hill again, and that way leaving his artillery completely alone, which, it was only a matter of time before that artillery was getting ambushed by one of the enemies. But this time Toby was there, and he was able to deal with the threat alongside with the support of the artillery, which eventually did not survive. But then again, if Toby would have gone towards the hill, he might have got some shots, but again the distance would be bigger, it would be harder to hit, and the artillery would pretty much be killed quicker, and that Leopard might even have survived that if he missed some of his shots. So now against a 1 versus 4, just short of that fabled Kolobanov's medal, he is facing off against the 2 remaining tank destroyers and 2 more SPGs. Encountering the Foch B at close range, he is able to hit those weak spots with way more ease than he would have at the longer distance he tried before, killing him, and then immediately he noticed the Jagdpanzer E100, who is still quite healthy. It would take at least 4 more rounds in order to kill that Jagdpanzer E100, so how is Toby going to deal with this? Well, first he lets the Jagdpanzer E100 get closer actually, and that way he's able to lure him around the rocks and quickly outflank him. And with his final round of the clip, he aims for the front of the track, giving him just enough time to pull back before the E100 can repair, move forward and turn his tank towards him. A perfect encounter, and now he is just 75 damage away from mostly winning the game. In the meantime, however, very important information is presented during this encounter because one of the artillery is capping. Moreover, the artillery that just fired, that came from the other side of the map still at the enemy base, hasn't really fired again in a long time. Meaning that the chances of that arting being the GW is way higher than it being the Object 261. Because the Object 261 has around 20 to 25 seconds reload, which gives us the information that no rounds were coming from our cap circle, means that the 261 is out of shells and is completely harmless when spotted. And with that, Toby disposes quickly of that artillery, leaving only one left, but well, that time is ticking and that artillery, although not the most mobile one, has still some time to relocate before Toby reaches his initial spot somewhere at the corner near A1. So with just half a minute left, Toby is desperately searching for the last remaining artillery, which might have relocated already more towards the south, and he might not be able to find him in this location. But luckily he does, and with just 12 seconds left, he aims his shots more carefully, making every shot count. Even one missed shot would give more risk in this situation, and he's able to finish off the final artillery, giving him a grand total of 6,500 damage, over 1,000 damage blocked and also over 1,000 damage spotted. Absolute great game that was just short of a Kolopanov's medal. Now, normally I would be presenting the post-game stats through WoT replays in this instance. However, this particular replay just could not be uploaded towards WoT replays, unfortunately. So instead of that, I'm showing just some extra information through the way that Toby Thomas initially posted this very replay, and that was through our Discord server. So with this information, we know that Toby Thomas earned the grand total XP of 1435, which is very respectable for a tier 10 game. And also we know that the amount of assist damage was around 50-50 on which was spotting and which was tracking. And we can just guess which medals he would have gotten, but he most likely got an ace tanker out of it, I'm sure about that one. So in general, we saw that Toby, although he carried pretty much the game, he was exceptionally good at supporting his team, keeping a good overview from a strong supporting position just further back when some of his teammates just went in and tried to focus down an isolated enemy. Also later on, instead of just trying to deal some damage by penning the 279E, he instead tracked the 279E, making a more easier target for his artillery, which he then also tried to protect a bit more in order to keep the odds a bit higher. Just a great team mentality right there. Also knowing when he's no more effective on a position. Pulling back and trying to reflank, since being in that location would not only cause him to just, well, peek, see nothing and probably get spotted and shot back by the hidden camping tanks, and would eventually also cut him into a crossfire between those tanks and the 279E, who was still on the hill on that moment. And also he expertly countered the non-turreted tank destroyers who were out of their game, focusing down on close range the Force B by hitting those cupola weak spots and being able to completely destroy the E100 by using his very last shots to track him and give him once again time to fully reload behind the cover of that rock formation. So, in short, this was a kind of slow-paced, insightful battle where you have time to analyze and access the situation. Most of the times the games are just a little bit more quicker and we rush our brains with those quick plays in order to keep up with the game. But it isn't really necessary all of the time. Sometimes take your time from a less action-packed location and process calmly the information you got, like in an analysis video like this. Like, what is the best decision to make here, especially when repositioning from that initial forwards location, giving just more reasons to relocate, which can be hard from a forwards dominant position because you don't want to give up. But if we got all of the reasons, that being, well, no more targets to fire at, the potential crossfire you can get in, and with that processing you can come to a conclusion, even though it might be less quicker, you come to a more thought out conclusion that repositioning, even though you are giving up this forwards dominant position, is a way better choice for the long term in this particular match. So hopefully you have learned something once again from Toby Thomas. I'm sure we see him once again in the next episode. And then I'm gonna ban him. He's too much in those. He's too much in these episodes. No hard feelings, Toby. You are an amazing asset on these series and giving some amazing gameplay in order to learn from. And if you learned, like the video, and I will see you in the next one. Laters!